You mentioned a moment ago, desire modulation was part of these steps. I know we skipped a few steps, but you're talking about seeing your desires and then changing them. What are you referencing there? Like, isn't desire part of the thing that helps us, get out of bed and be motivated to accomplish something?
Sure. Yeah. I'm not an advocate for having no desires at all. And I actually, a lot of people interpret like Buddhism that way. And I don't think that's really what it's about either. But attachments to specific outcomes will cause us to suffer both when we fail to achieve those outcomes because we didn't have that control in the first place. And very often when we achieve them and realize that wasn't what we wanted in the first place, that doesn't actually make us happy. And so we have a lot of rogue desires sort of running around in our heads, causing problems. They create biases. They cause us to take actions we're not proud of, and they result in suffering. And so I think it's best to look at your desires and say, which of these are actually pulling me in the direction of my values, and which ones are sort of pulling me away from them or distracting from that aim. And then you essentially want to rework them until all of your desires are sort of in general alignment with what actually makes you proud of yourself and admire yourself. And that's getting into the message of the new book a little bit. But in general, going through and saying, okay, what desire is causing me to suffer here? Well, okay, I'm in traffic right now. I want to be moving, and I'm stuck here. You'll suffer and you'll experience anxiety and anger if you don't do something about that desire, and it just keeps pushing and saying, I don't want to be stuck in traffic. And so you can go in and sort of channel the feeling that you might get if you're stuck at a red light, and then it turns green, but actually you were doing something, you wanted more time at the red light, and then you're like, oh no, I have to put my phone down or whatever. And so there are sort of ways to balance out your desires or to lower your desires. If we look at like the Walter Mischel marshmallow test, where we kind of learned that children who are better able to delay gratification have better life outcomes long term. Ultimately, what the children who are able to resist a marshmallow for longer are doing is they're employing psychological methods to alter or lower those desires because they know it aligns more with their values on some level, to wait and do what they were asked to, right? Get a second marshmallow or whatever the reward is. So you can, distract yourself.
Is that them thinking about their values and what aligns with it? Or
It's
is it they
definitely not
might just
thinking
think
of
they're
it.
going to get more marshmallows if they hold on?
Agreed.
Could that just be
Either way.
greed? They're just
Yeah.
smarter about manipulating their greed.
Right. Well, and it's all about getting what will actually make you happier, but not caving into the thing that you kind of know won't make you happier, but your desires really want. And so I think the kids who did that successfully were distracting themselves, playing with a toy. Another option is to reinterpret the way you think about the marshmallow or whatever the thing you want is. So there are lots of methods for getting these desires to work with you instead of against you. I also think a lot of people who appear unmotivated in their lives, who think they are lazy or they just can't, get anything done, are actually people with a lot of conflicting desires. And so they're pointing in sort of opposing directions and keeping them what appears to be standing still. But if you could just get those desires to line up, you would find yourself to be an incredibly motivated person. So it's just a matter of developing greater control over these individual wants.
That's interesting. Sometimes I find myself, and I see this in my wife too, where it's almost like paralysis by analysis. Like you got so much stuff that you want to do, and they're all pointing different directions, and it's kind of like it makes it hard to take a step forward. So you'd rather just like ignore the whole list.
Yeah.
So, but taking the time to analyze those with like from a different angle of your mind allows you to kind of direct the traffic a little bit better and make a more efficient way to get through the to-do list or whatever.
What are some rituals or practices or things that you do on a regular basis?
Yeah, this is a good question. So I've sort of gone through the whole like self-help, personal improvement habits phase in my life where I had like was trying to stack like 20 habits in my morning routine. And what I've found is that I really prefer what you might call trigger-based habits. And this is something where when I have a certain kind of thought, I try to build either another hot thought or a certain behavior like writing it down in a journal app based on that thought. And so on any given day, I've got these kind of triggers going off in my brain saying, oh, I just had like a pessimistic thought. How do I approach that? What do I do about that? Do I write this down in kind of a cognitive log? Do I try to replace it with this other thought? And so I've pretty much gotten to where, aside from like the basic hygiene things, I don't have a lot that I do every day. I work out regularly. I take a shower in the morning, brush my teeth, that kind of thing. But I don't have like the 7 like cold shower meditation, like all the typical self-help things. And I've found that really building good systems that are sort of activated by certain psychological triggers have been the most helpful thing for me.
Do you review your virtues on a regular basis? Is that something that you like to look at daily then, in a sense of like, oh yeah, that's what I'm aiming for every day?
I actually at one point had a mission statement that I would read out loud to myself every day. And what I found is anytime you have something like that you do every day, it kind of becomes a chore and it loses its power after a couple months. So I like to revisit my my sort of virtues list and make changes every like 3 years or so. And I will, obviously check back in with it periodically throughout. But it's always on my mind. I'm always conscious of it as I'm making decisions. I have the option of like hiring a team right now and becoming basically a manager. And I don't think that would bring out my greatest strengths. So I'm staying solo for the time being, even though, it might speed things up to build this whole team. I want to really make sure I'm bringing out my strengths the best I can. And I think I'm doing that. The way I'm doing it now is the best way to do that. So it's a big part of my considerations.
Yeah, I love that insight, because so often that's all we're hearing right now is go, 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 do more cold plunges, do more gratitude journaling, then you'll be successful. And so it's always neat to see how other high performers are doing things and saying, listen, you can be just as successful or do whatever. You don't need to do that. So I really value just that insight that in kind of your path too, because I go down the self-development path myself and just go, go, go. And oh, this is the new thing I got to add. Now my morning habit's taking me 2 hours. It used to only take me 1. So it's
exactly.
nice. Yeah, it's nice to hear that what other people are doing. That's why I asked that question.
I write about this in one of the chapters of the book, and I did a piece for Modern Stoicism recently where I talked about Stoicism and desire regulation. And it's kind of a different angle to look at it that kind of connects more to modern psychology. It's this idea that many of these Stoic principles are actually meant to help us manipulate our own desires, either increase a desire or decrease it, right? And so I kind of go through these different methods, right? Gratitude, right? Negative visualization, the view from above that you were referencing earlier, these different thought experiments or mindsets or exercises, they can be used to tame your desires. So the traditional way of dealing with desires, of course, is to just try to get everything you want. And that's this sort of grasping, controlling approach that tends to be problematic, right? If you actually try to control the desires themselves, rather than trying to get everything you want, you can get what you want much more easily without the strain and the suffering that we tend to think goes along with our desires, right? So, gratitude is a great way. It's a great habit to build, like a weekly gratitude practice, simply because it increases your desires for what you already have and decreases your desires for what you don't have. Because so often that's our problem. We're essentially taking for granted all the things that we already have and all the good things about our lives, and we're blowing all the things we don't have way out of proportion. So this kind of resets that and puts it in proper proportion, right? You know, you can view Buddhist ideas like non-self, right? The idea that the self is an illusion. You can view that as a desire regulation method as well, because when someone insults us, the reason why we get upset is because we have this identity construct that we feel is hurt, right? Someone has damaged who we are as a person. And when you kind of distance yourself from that notion of self, when you step back and say, okay, well, this is all a lot more complex than that. You know, a person is not a story, right? There's all these different complexities. You can turn down that desire to be this perfect individual that no one would ever criticize, right? So there are all these different methods for it's kind of controlling and not controlling simultaneously, because you're grasping less over what you want, but you're also domesticating your desires. I talk about the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Right. It's been found that extrinsic motivations, like you know, the desire to make money or get more social status or more Facebook likes or whatever it is that that is exciting you. These are actually not only less motivating than intrinsic desires, but they can actually hurt performance. They can actually damage your effectiveness if you're getting rewarded in these extrinsic ways. So the question becomes, do you fully commit to your intrinsic desires, to your own motivations that are sort of the deepest within you and your passions, right? Or do you just force yourself to do things that you don't want to do all the time and find ways to motivate yourself? And I think the answer
to get that extrinsic goal, like you said, I love this.
Right. Yeah, so I think the answer is that you're never going to be able to sustain long-term a bunch of desires for things you don't actually want, or a bunch of motivation for things you don't actually want to do. If your whole life is centered around doing things that you don't find pleasant, then it's not going to work. You're going to burn out before long. So I think the answer is that you need to factor your sort of deepest motivations and passions into the path that you take, and you really want to use intrinsic desire to achieve these creative, you know, actually intellectually stimulating tasks. And then sometimes you'll need to use extrinsic motivation. You'll need this sort of carrot and stick motivation in order to do the instrumental tasks that you need to achieve that big intrinsic goal, right? But ultimately, I think, you know, what I kind of lay out as a method for actually setting these goals is that you really don't want your desires to have anything to do with them. You really want your values to be this sort of top level determinant of your goals. And I think, you know, it can be hard to distinguish at times, but I think desires have this sort of hot motivational pulling force. They're like these screams that you can't ignore, and your values are often the whispers that are hard to notice. But if you can get in touch with those values and that person that you really want to be, and then you set the goals below that, the individual sub goals to achieve what you need to, you can use your desires as the fuel to get yourself there. And you can use intrinsic motivation, or you can use carrot and stick rewards whenever you think it'll be the most effective way to achieve those goals.
No, I like all of that. You know, I like the intrinsic extrinsic dichotomy there. I think that it definitely fits into a lot of what we talk about when it comes to, say, you know, the dichotomy of control. What can you really control? Pull it back in, you know, within yourself there. And I think that it also plays into this idea of living in agreement with nature. I don't want to read into it just into, you know, the philosophy that we're talking about here, Stoicism, but it definitely makes sense that you would want to remove the clutter and find out what it is that you as a person and your nature is really looking for. And I like that I think you used the phrase to get in touch with your values. I much prefer that, to say something like, to redesign your values, because it's there are some, I think that there's, I've been convinced lately that there is like a real biological element to an evolutionary element to virtue and to higher order values, that if you're able to uncover within yourself, it's almost as if you find like a wellspring of intrinsic motivation, because you realize that that's the really important stuff that is going to move you forward. And so you put your life together in such a way that your internal nature and your values are working for the good of your culture and of the people around you, and that's how you kind of fit into this you fit into the system into which you were born, by uncovering what it is that you really are deep down, and seeing how you can bring that out to a greater extent. I think I like what Sharon LaBelle says. She says, it's like taking your seat in the theater of life, and finally finding out what it is that you're supposed to be doing, where you're supposed to be going.